Let's start with the facts, the receipts. Before we get into the heavy stuff, let's look at things we know happened. We know that government agencies, under various administrations, have used programs to monitor public sentiment online. There are documented cases where officials have coordinated with social media companies to flag or remove content deemed to be foreign misinformation or a threat to public health. We also have records of government-funded reports and studies that are strategically released to the media to shape the debate around a new law or a foreign policy decision. These aren't wild theories from a guy in a tinfoil hat. These are actions confirmed through public records, journalistic investigations, and even government admissions. These actions form a baseline for our discussion. They are the anchor in reality. For example, reports from the Department of Homeland Security have outlined strategies for countering narratives that could lead to violence. So what exactly are we talking about when we use a term like psychological operations, or PSYOPs? In the military, the definition is pretty clear. It's about influencing the emotions, motives, behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, individuals. Historically, this meant dropping leaflets from airplanes, broadcasting radio messages to enemy soldiers to persuade them to surrender. It was a tool of war, aimed squarely at an external enemy. But in the modern age, the lines have become fuzzy, and the battlefield has expanded to include the internet, the news cycle, the phones we hold in our hands. The techniques once reserved for foreign adversaries are now sometimes discussed in the context of domestic issues. The modern domestic version of this is less about overt commands and more about subtle nudges. It's about creating an environment where a certain way of thinking feels natural, inevitable, just common sense. This can happen when a government agency repeatedly uses specific, emotionally charged language to describe a problem. Words like crisis, threat, urgent can make people feel anxious and more willing to accept swift, decisive action without asking too many questions. It's not a command to believe something, it's an invitation to feel a certain way, and our feelings often drive our beliefs more than we'd like to admit. This shaping of the informational environment is the core of the issue. It isn't necessarily about telling outright lies. Though that can happen, it's more often about the selective presentation of facts, amplification of certain voices, strategic timing of information releases. For instance, releasing a grim economic forecast right before a congressional vote on a spending bill can create public pressure on lawmakers. Leaking a negative story about a political opponent to a friendly journalist can dominate the news cycle and drown out other, more substantive issues. These are all moves designed to manage and direct public perception, steering it toward a desired outcome. Ultimately, these operations are about control of the narrative. In a democracy, the narrative is supposed to be a messy, chaotic conversation involving millions of different voices. A psychological campaign seeks to streamline that mess. It tries to impose order on the chaos by making one story louder, more compelling, more emotionally resonant than all the others. The goal is to make the government's preferred version of reality the one that everyone is talking about, thinking about, reacting to. It's a subtle but powerful way of setting the terms of the debate before the public even has a chance to weigh in. When a government wants to shape public opinion, it has a whole toolbox of methods, many of which look perfectly normal on the surface. The most common tool is media messaging. This goes beyond a simple press release. It involves a coordinated campaign where multiple officials repeat the exact same talking points: TV, radio, newspapers. This creates an echo chamber effect, making a viewpoint seem like a widely held consensus, even if it's just a handful saying the same thing. The repetition makes the message stick, burrowing into public consciousness. Another powerful tool is the strategic use of fear and warnings. Our brains are hardwired to react to threats. A sense of imminent danger can override critical thinking. Vague, but alarming alerts about security threats, health scares, economic downturns. These warnings, delivered with grave seriousness, can make the public more compliant and more willing to accept measures they might otherwise question, like increased surveillance or restrictions on personal freedoms. Data and targeting represent the high-tech frontier of influence. In the digital age, vast amounts of data are collected about our online behavior, our location, and our social connections. Agencies can micro-target messages to specific groups, tailoring to hopes, fears, and biases to maximize persuasion. Finally, proxies and partnerships. funding think tanks and studies, giving friendly outlets access, so outside validators launder the message as objective analysis. Let's ground these methods in some simple, clear-cut examples to see how they work in the real world. For media messaging, imagine a push for a controversial surveillance bill, the Secretary of Homeland Security on a morning show, the head of the FBI in a major newspaper op-ed, a White House spokesperson in a press briefing, all using the exact same phrase, "We need these tools to stop the threats of tomorrow." This isn't a coincidence, it's a coordinated messaging campaign designed to frame the debate and make opposition seem irresponsible. For fear and warnings, consider a small local incident. A nationwide alert uses broad, frightening language about potential similar events. It gets blasted everywhere. On every news channel and every smartphone. People become anxious and start seeing threats everywhere. The fear makes the public more receptive to calls for increased security measures, more police funding, or new restrictions. For data and targeting, think of a public health campaign. Officials identify low-uptake neighborhoods and run ads only in those zip codes, featuring trusted local figures and addressing local rumors. Highly persuasive, but it bypasses broader public conversation. For partnerships, a respected think tank publishes a timely report backing a weapons sale. Media and officials cite it as objective cover. When a government frequently uses these psychological tools on its own people, the first casualty is always trust. Trust is the glue that holds a society together. It's the belief that our institutions, by and large, are operating in good faith and telling us the truth. But when people feel they are being managed, manipulated, or selectively informed, that trust begins to crumble. Every government statement, every official report, every public health announcement gets viewed through suspicion. People begin to ask, what aren't they telling us? What's the real agenda here? This erosion of trust has a direct and corrosive effect on democracy itself. If the ecosystem is polluted with fear-based messaging, coordinated talking points, and hidden campaigns, public decision-making is compromised. People may vote on amplified fears or support a war built on curated narratives that omit inconvenient facts. When the government becomes chief persuader, it short-circuits the democratic process. The constant drumbeat fuels anxiety, stress, and powerlessness, especially under surveillance and profiling pressures. It frays the social fabric, pitting neighbor against neighbor and making common ground harder. The ultimate cost is a loss of freedom, freedom from overreach and the freedom of thought itself. A healthy society lets individuals access a wide range of information and form their own conclusions. Psychological campaigns narrow that range, making dissent socially costly. So, how can you protect yourself from being manipulated without retreating into a bunker of paranoia? Diversify your information diet. Don't rely on a single news channel, a single website, or a single social feed. Read across the spectrum and include international outlets for different perspectives on US events. When a story is dramatic, open a few tabs to see how others cover it. Comparison reveals when a talking point is being pushed. Become a detective, find the study or memo, read the executive summary, look at the data, and see if conclusions match the headlines. Many studies are nuanced, some leaks are just drafts. Reading past the headline defends against sensationalism and spin. Pay attention to language and timing. Be wary of emotional superlatives, and ask why this story is surfacing now. Is there a vote coming? Is it distracting from another story? Context often reveals motive. Practice mindful sharing. Before you spread a shocking alert, take a breath and verify with reputable sources. Small habits create a mental firewall, helping you evaluate information calmly and rationally, based on evidence rather than emotion. In the end, it's clear the US government possesses a powerful and sophisticated array of tools that can influence what the public thinks and feels. As we've seen, these methods range from coordinated media campaigns and fear-based alerts to data-driven micro-targeting and third-party validators. While sometimes deployed for public safety, these same tools can be, and have been, used to manufacture consent, control narratives, and sideline critics. This isn't a partisan issue, it's about power and the temptation to manage perception instead of open debate. The consequences are severe. Trust erodes, citizens grow suspicious, democracy weakens, and the information environment gets polluted. It also takes a toll on mental health, anxiety, division, cynicism. The antidote is not paranoia or disengagement, but active, engaged, and critical citizenship. Practical steps are straightforward. Diversify sources, seek original documents, question timing and language, be mindful of what you share. These actions empower us to be discerning consumers rather than passive recipients, and to reclaim intellectual and emotional autonomy. So, here is the one final thought. Always demand the receipts first. Before you accept a reason, a justification, an explanation,